Welcome back to Keepers of Our Republic, a weekly nonpartisan podcast talking to election officials and judges about defending the rule of law and free and fair elections, also known as How We Keep Our Republic. I'm your host, Tate Fall. If this is your first time joining us, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and join us here every week on Thursdays for these conversations. Today, I'm joined by Philip Hinson. Philip currently serves as the Deputy Director of Elections in Union County, North Carolina. With over 16 years working in local government, Philip started with Union County as a 911 telecommunicator before moving to elections in 2015. Since joining the Board of Elections, he's had various duties and roles and administered 20 elections, including 3 presidential elections. Goodness. Thank you, Philip, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Awesome. Well, why don't you start off by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself, how you got into elections, especially coming from 911. That's really unique,
Yeah.
although both very high stress, so I can see that. And also tell us why you stay through all of the noise in elections. What keeps you coming back every day?
Well, how did I get into elections? Well, I worked, like you say, I worked at the 911 center for about 5 years. I never really intended to work there, but when I graduated college, the economy was not the greatest, and there weren't that many jobs really that were there. So I got into there so I could get in with the county in another way. But my education background is I do have a bachelor's degree in political science from University of North Carolina. So I've always been at Charlotte. I've always been into politics, and you know, so I figured when this job opened up at the Board of Elections, I was like, that'd be neat, a way to utilize my education. So I went for it, and you know, it was definitely a big change. I joke because, excuse me, the director at the time that hired me said, "Yeah, come over here and work. It's not that big of a stressful job. Um, there's not that much overtime. It's pretty laid back." And this was in 2015. So I did, and turns out, the 911 center was less stressful. So, you know, that's one of the things I like to tell people is that it was easier over there dealing with those situations,
Yeah.
than administering elections. So, so then I've been, like I say, I've been with the board of elections for 11 years now. And through all those elections, the presidential elections, it's definitely been a huge learning experience, and every election is different, I would say, due to the constantly changing environment that we administer elections in, and the constantly changing laws
Yep.
that we have to administer, processes that are different. So I would
Especially in
say
North
one thing that
Carolina
keeps
and Georgia. Oh my gosh. Every session, new
yes.
laws.
Yeah, and I keep that's one thing I keep a watch on, through the state house is the constantly introduced legislation that pops up, and, a lot of it doesn't go anywhere, thankfully. But then the stuff that does make it through is usually some pretty substantial changes that affects the way that we have to administer elections, and change our processes and adapt, and we have no choice but to do that. So that's, would say one of the things keeps me here is the challenge of administering things. It's uh, always always something new that you're learning and dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a new problem to solve, right? It's always something.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Union County, how many voters you have, the number of precincts and staff members, and anything that's unique about Union County.
So Union County is we're located just to the east of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. So whenever most people probably know where Charlotte is, it's the biggest city in the state. Apparently, a lot of people like Charlotte because they keep moving there, so from all over, and also they keep moving to Union County and they work in Charlotte. So our county is rapidly growing. We currently have about 185,000 registered voters, We have 54 election day precincts and 9 early voting precincts. Um, and those numbers will probably go up after this election as far as the number of precincts. We have some precincts that are pretty big and they're going to have to be split because they're close to 7,000 voters in a precinct. So that's always a continual challenge to keep
Yeah.
up with is to find places to actually have
I know
precincts.
that that's something we really struggled with in my last role in Cobb County is we were schools had asked us to pull out because of safety concerns, which I completely understand. But that was a lot of our places, you know? And then, constantly had turnover in churches, and one pastor would want to serve, one pastor would not want to serve as a polling place. And
Right.
I mean, in Georgia, like North Carolina, we have so many elections, special elections, runoffs. It's so much on those sites. And it's hard to get people to be willing to open up the doors whenever there's an election. It's a lot.
Yeah. And it is a lot. And we're in a lot of schools. And one thing that we did was we worked with the school board to close school on your
Oh,
election day
I
because
love that.
yeah, I mean, I as a parent of a child in those schools, I don't want individuals come into that school either. So I
Right.
completely understand that.
Yeah.
Um, but the churches, the fire departments, the other town buildings, it's a lot. So that's one of the biggest struggles that we have right now is just finding facilities to host these events, host these elections.
Yeah.
Um, and also the workers, poll workers. That's a big component of what we do. We can't run an election without poll workers. So
Right.
and we'll use between 400 to 600 depending on the election. So that's another huge task that we take on every
Yeah.
single cycle.
Yeah, it's one of those things that is kind of part of the unseen part of the planning is, okay, we need to split this precinct. Okay, that means we need to find another location. We need to get additional equipment, additional supplies, additional people. So are you pulling your, assistant chief or assistant poll manager to be the new poll manager? Are you bringing in new people? It's a lot. It's a lot of tinkering and moving pieces constantly.
It is. It's a huge logistical undertaking that I think unless you've actually worked in elections, you really don't know how big of a task it is and just how much work election administrators put into every single election. So
Absolutely.
it's definitely eye opening. Like before I started, I had no idea, and I had been a big political watcher and really uh, interested in that whole process. But prior to coming to work here, I didn't know everything that goes on, and it is a tremendous amount of work, and it's really sometimes a miracle that it all works out every election.
I know.
So
I completely agree. It's held together by duct tape and cones, and that's just how it works. So I've been there. And kind of in that same vein, when we talked previously, you described yourself as the election day problem solver, which every office has one. I'd love if you could share with our listeners an election day problem that needed solving in the past that kind of sticks out to you.
well, and one of the things I like to say is we don't call them problems. They are opportunities for improvements or
Love it. Love.
opportunities for advancement or enhancement. So, and that could be anything from a simple equipment problem, your poll books, printers, election tabulator, something like that, to uh, logistical issues with parking, with entrance and exits to polling places. There could be issues with some campaigners, some that don't like to follow the rules or don't know the rules. Those those type of issues. Anything that's happening at a polling place, usually that somebody needs to go from our office to take a look at. I'm usually the person to do that and figure out a solution, the best we can to address whatever's going on. Because we can't stop the election. It's going on one way or another. So But those are some of the issues I look at during every
Yeah.
election day.
Yeah. I think back to there's so many unforeseen things that can happen, right? I mean, of course, if there's bad weather or, whatever that may be, summer storms here in Georgia, I'm sure similar to North Carolina, knock out the power all the time. So I've had, you show up to the precinct, the power's out. They're
Right.
repaving the road, so the entrance is closed,
Yeah.
you can't get in. Just so many different things that are out of
Yeah.
our control, our orbit, that we have to just make it work. Because, like you said, the election's
Right.
happening. So,
Yeah.
you gotta figure it out, right?
There there's some, I mean, there's some things you can prepare for, like you said, power outages. So I carry around in my vehicle on election day pretty much everything you need to run an election, from equipment to generators to EcoFlow backup batteries. And the power outage thing is something that, I mean, it seems like it happens every election. When you have 54 polling places, that's 54 opportunities for the power to go out. So it seems like that happens. And we continue on. I mean, even before I get there to restore some power or to provide some backup power, we don't stop voting. We keep voting because we have paper poll books that are backups, and we have paper ballots, and we have pins to mark those paper ballots, and that's basically all you need to continue voting without power. So we have contingency plans in place. Like you say, we never stop. We keep going.
That's right. And I know we talked about this a little bit already, but you handle really the logistics, like we said, for the elections in Union County. And that covers everything from logic and accuracy testing to maintenance to poll pads. So tell us, what does a typical cycle look like when it comes to preparing and deploying your election equipment?
So the equipment itself is a major part of the election, and the preparation for that equipment begins in, for this cycle, the elections in November. We will start working on that equipment in August, probably mid to late August. So once we get all our information to our election programmers, who's also the manufacturer of the equipment, we use Hart Inter Civic equipment. So we will provide them with all the jurisdictions, the contests, the candidates. They will go through and create the actual ballots. Once those are proofed and we agree everything is correct, the programming is set, and that programming is installed on the equipment. And then we begin the process of logic and accuracy testing, which is something that can take weeks. And this is the process that happens before every single election. And that's something I really wanted people to know, is that we don't just pull this equipment off the shelf, turn it on, load on a program, and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of testing that goes into making sure that these machines are operating correctly, accurately, and that they're going to perform on election day. So that's, like I say, we will begin that soon.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, what I always explain in logic and accuracy testing is, so in Georgia we voted on touchscreens up until next year, maybe, I guess. We'll see if that sticks. So, logic and accuracy, we're testing our screen, so we're checking to make sure the screen, it's checking the person I'm intending to check, it's printing the person I intended to choose. And then we're also testing that the scanner is tabulating the results according to what the printed ballot says. And so, there's checks and balances at how all the equipment interacts with each other, with the poll pads, the touch screens, the scanners, and then also the tabulation process, the behind the scenes, kind of the election night process. All of that's tested and certified ahead of time to make sure that everything's working as it should.
Yeah, and another thing I would add is that this is all performed by, it's not just myself, it's multiple people that are involved in this process. So we're bipartisan, we're from different parties. But that really, we don't ever talk about or think about that. We're here to make sure that everything works correct. But there are multiple individuals, everything is documented. uh, to ensure transparency. And then we have records that everything worked correctly and everything is meets the standards that it should. So that's one of the things that is really important for people to understand. Like I say, is the bipartisan, nonpartisan process that these all go through to ensure that this equipment works. It's secure. It hasn't been tampered with. We know this. There's a lot of checks and balances. So for one of the first things we do when we start that logic and accuracy testing is we do what's called a hash test. And what a hash test is it compares kind of the fingerprint of the election program and the software that are on each unit to what is supposed to be on there. I guess you would say. You compare the two files, and if there was any change, if anybody, changed at any point, anything that's not supposed to be there, it would show up and those files would not match. So we perform that before every election on every piece of equipment. Also, this equipment just is kept secure. I mean, it's kept secure in our warehouse. That's access control with card access. There's cameras, logs of whoever goes in there, um, and it's locked up. It's not like we leave it sitting around for anybody to come look at. Uh, Access controls are a big part of that chain of custody and security that we go through as well. So, and then when we get to the actual logic and accuracy test, if there's ever any issue that pops up or something that does not seem exactly right with a piece of equipment, I don't use it. I don't send it out. It goes back to manufacturer. They look at it, investigate. If it's a hardware issue, they replace it. If it's some kind of software, something, they'll take care of that too. And then when we get that equipment back, it goes right back through the same process again of hash testing, logic and accuracy, everything before we even think of sending it out to be used.
Yeah, that's great. I think that that really shows the intricacies and the steps in place to ensure that the results are accurate. And it's not just like you said, we don't just grab them off the shelf and toss them in the car and drive to the polling place, right? There's so many steps in place. And then there's
Right.
also proper steps, chain of custody when we send it off to have it be repaired or fixed or whatever the case may be. And there's, like you said, documentation for all of that. And especially that, the ability and the increases we've had in security funds, I think has been really helpful. I think a lot of those additional funds have helped offices get a lot of access control, extra cameras, things like that. So we're not using metal keys to get into these rooms. There's, like you said, a record of every single person that badges in. And that I think helps us have even more records to show that our equipment is safe and secure.
Right. And I mean, that's a huge part of it. We recently went through a renovation and expansion at our office. It was completed in 2023, and we worked a lot prior to even designing. We had Homeland Security come in. They did an assessment. We figured out what we needed. So there was a lot of planning that went into actually just the space that this equipment is stored in. The walls of our warehouse are hardened, and what that means is they're not just hollow uh, cinder block or CMU block. Once they built the walls, they put rebar down on and pumped concrete through them. So you could literally ram into the side of our building with a car to the warehouse and you're not getting in. So I mean, that's the level of security that we're forced to go through now.
Yeah,
We have to think
absolutely.
about these type of things.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, so it's a lot. It's not something we take lightly. I mean, we take it very seriously. Like you say, it's the confidence that of the voters is what we're here to boost. I mean, they need to have confidence that what they vote is what is counted and that the election results are true. So that's our overall goal.
So I think also there's a lot of opportunities for the public to come and see. those processes in place. I know in Georgia, they could come to logic and accuracy testing, they could come to post-election audits, they could be there on election night and watch tabulation take place, not in the room, but outside of the room and kind of see what it looks like. And they weren't even official observers, they were just members of the public. And so there's so many opportunities for them to come and see for themselves all the things that you're talking about, all those processes in place.
Yeah, and that's one of the important things is transparency. We want everybody to see what's going on, that everything is being performed the way it should be. So, just like you said, they can see logic and accuracy testing. They can come and see the other important component to that, which is the post-election audit that you talked about, which a lot of people don't know that we do. And what that is where the state will pick two random precincts and they'll tell us that we have to take those paper ballots and we have a team tabulate by hand the race at the top of that ballot and compare it to the election tabulator machine tape, to ensure that provide another opportunity for the public to see that it's tabulating correctly. The machine is, and it always matches. So that should instill confidence in what's going on. And also the same thing on election night. We have as part of our renovation, our tabulating room has a big glass window and has microphones so the public can come and they can stand there at that glass window. They can see every single thing that's going on. They can hear what's going on. Just in the spirit of transparency and to instill that confidence that we're after.
Absolutely. And I think again it's all of these places of transparency, right? And I know that this legislative session this year was the last of the last few states. So now all 50 states have post-election audits in place, which I think is a huge tool to build that trust and show the transparency. And every state does them a little bit different. They're not all the same, but now they're all in place. So voters
Yeah.
can go and watch those and learn more about how we make sure before, during, and after we're checking and making sure everything's working as it should be.
Right. And I mean, that's the goal here, especially in today's day and age. You have so much noise out there about election machines, election tabulators are not secure. And I know here in my county that could be there could be nothing farther from the truth because they're probably the most secure things in this county in terms of technology wise because they are locked in secured access control environments. They're never on any network. They don't touch any networks at all. There's all kinds of passcodes and password protections that you have to have. As far as the operating systems themselves, I can't even get to that. That's all encrypted. So it's really there's a lot of information out there and a lot of it's bad. So it's a constant moving target that we have to go after to ensure the public that hey, this is what's going on. These are secure. You can be confident that these are working the right way, correctly, and that's what we try to do every single election. And I will say that we've had so many recounts, we've had so many hand to eye audits, we've had manual recounts since using our current equipment that we started using in 2020. That I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. There should be no doubt in the general public voting's mind that they do work as intended and they are accurate and they are secure.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I kind of in the same vein, I think, you really are what I would describe as like a project manager for your office. So you oversee all those kind of daily activities and projects. And you also implement a lot of new processes or new equipment in Union County.
Right.
So what's been one of your favorite or most helpful projects that you and the team in Union County have implemented?
I think probably the most productive and best all around new process or project that we implemented was the implementation of our new equipment in just prior to the primary of 2020. But prior to that, we were using touchscreen machines at early voting which had a paper backup, and we were using hand marked ballots on election day. But going forward, starting in 2020, we wanted everybody to have a hand marked paper ballot. So what we use at early voting now is really what you call ballot on demand. So the voter presents, we look them up in the poll book. That tells that prints off a sheet that the poll worker scans with the HART equipment. It then prints out their correct ballot, and they get that ballot and they go vote it. Otherwise, we have so many splits jurisdictions that we would have in some cases between 2 and 300 different ballot styles, and that's impossible to keep on hand at each early voting site. So
Absolutely.
that ballot on demand ensures that every single voter gets the correct ballot because there's no worker that has to manually enter any information to get that ballot style. They don't have to sort through a stack of different ballots. That's all right there. All they have to do is scan the barcode. The equipment that produces the ballot also was went through that logic and actually testing to ensure that it is producing the correct ballot and everything works. So that I think is probably the biggest project that we've done that I think had the biggest impact on overall operations and also hopefully in the confidence of voters that they all have a paper ballot, they have a record, they know what they've marked. Whereas the touch screens, there were always those complaints where I don't really know what it's
Right.
doing. So the paper ballots, I think, kind of solved that issue, and
Yeah.
that was a big project.
Absolutely. It is amazing when you do that. We implemented ballot on demand printers when I was in Arlington, Virginia, and it helped so much. It reduced waste because you don't have all of those paper ballots, all those different ballot styles at early voting sites,
Right.
like you said, which would be such a bear to try to keep track of. So there's less worry. I know if I was a voter and I walked in and I saw like a tailgate table with all these blank ballots on there, that's concerning, right? So instead, you have this printer that has been tested, has been sealed, and it gives you a rundown on every single ballot that was printed that day, who printed it, which poll pad printed it. And so you have an even higher level of that adjudication piece than you do when you're just doing paper ballots out of a pack of 100. So I love ballot on demand printers. I think they're a huge asset.
Yeah, and even down to the fact that a lot of people have said, well, money, each dollar bill has a serial number on it. Why can't we put serial numbers on ballots? Well, our ballots do have that on it, though they have identifiable serial numbers on them. I guess you would call it. They call it just identifier, but it's a serial number where we could track back, every ballot that we've printed. So another thing that does is if somebody were to get a hold of one ballot and they try to go copy it and they're like, I'm going to run some ballots through a machine. Well, our machines will only take that ballot one time and it knows, okay, I've already accepted this serial number and you cannot do that. So that's just another security feature on top of the fact that our ballots are also watermarked on special paper. You hold it up to the light and it says official ballot, and you can't get that paper anywhere else. So
Yeah.
that is also another enhancement to our security in that area.
Yeah, and I think that unique identifier that your ballots have, I think, is something that is unique to the equipment that y'all use because every county is different, every state's different. And it just shows that the election equipment vendors are also stepping up their game and implementing things like that because that wasn't a part of the equipment I had in Arlington, and our equipment was on the tail end of its life. But
Right.
it shows you that they're listening and that they're
They
trying to step up their game too.
Yeah, they are, and that was another selling point when we selected this equipment because we had 3 different vendors we could choose from, but, you know, there was to my knowledge, when we purchased this equipment in 2019, I don't think another vendor was doing that. I don't think there was another vendor putting serial numbers on there that would allow that ballot to be only accepted once. So that was another selling point. I'm not trying to sell for the company that we have, but um, I just want to tell everybody, we selected the equipment that we thought had the highest level of security and safeguards built in. So that's, why we went the way we did with the paper ballots and with this particular vendor.
All right. Well, final question. What is the one thing you would like voters to know about the processes and systems you have in place? I think we've talked about this a lot, but
Yeah.
take us home. Final words.
So I hate to harp on this again, but I want people to know, I speak for my county, any county, North Carolina, that all of the equipment that we use, the infrastructure that we use is secure. It has not been compromised. You can have confidence that what you put on your ballot is what is going to be counted. And there are people here that carry out these processes that are they're doing this in a bipartisan and professional manner, and they're here to ensure that everything is run in accordance with law and general statutes and every other guideline that we follow to ensure that the public can have confidence that the results are true.
Perfect. I love it. Well, thank you, Philip, for joining me today and for sharing your insights with our listeners. It's been so fun to chat logistics with you. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another episode talking with more keepers of our republic.
If you like this episode, please share it on social media and tell your friends. It's the best way for folks to find out about us. I hope you'll agree that our guest is indeed a keeper of the Republic. If you want to learn more about how you can help keep our Republic, stop on over to our website, keepourrepublic.org.